Hello and welcome to the WiSP News Desk. And I have to say, Nancy, it's kind of bittersweet, isn't it? This is our very last episode after 4 years of doing this show.
Yeah, it is bittersweet. I think, and we've, it's not even just 4 years. I think we managed to do it nearly every week of those 4 years. So it's, real constant. So hopefully we can go out on a high.
How are you feeling about it coming to an end?
It's definitely sad. But I think it's amazing to have those 4 years kind of in the bag and to be able to look back at it and reflect on kind of just the timeline, I guess, for women's sport over the past 4 years, and being able to document things like the pandemic and its impact on women's sports and coming out the other side. But I guess it gives us both the chance to go and do other things as well, and hopefully go and progress women's sports in other areas as well. So sure. Mixed emotions.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say, for anybody who has been listening to the show or listening to WiSP, since we started back, because I think I started podcasting in 2009 and I then formed WiSP. I think we've been going now, I want to say about 8, 9, 10 years. I don't know how many years it is. We're quite honest, I don't. But I know this show has been 4 years, and we've produced so many different shows. Some that have retired, like this one is going to retire after 4 years. Some have been seasonal, and we've had a whole range of athletes from so many different sports that have had the opportunity to become podcast hosts themselves. So looking back over all these years, I just thought it was time for me personally to take a little bit of a break over the holidays, because we have Thanksgiving this week, of course, and then it's Christmas, and I'm doing so many other different things as well as WiSP now that I just thought it would be a chance for me to take a deep breath and sit back and not have the pressure of producing a show every week. So I've been cutting back slowly with several of the shows, but this one it just kept going because I enjoy it, you enjoy it, and it's a great opportunity to review women's sports news every week. So I will be taking a break, and we'll come back in the new year with new shows or something completely different. And it may well be, because I have somebody who has got some ideas to do things differently. So, just stay tuned. In the meanwhile, there's tons of shows for you to go back, tons of episodes, thousands of episodes to go back and listen to of some really hardy, perennial interviews that we've done across a range of sports. So for today, Nancy and I are going to wrap up this week with just a brief look at what's been happening for the last week in women's sports, those headlines, and then just reflect back on the past few years, because as Nancy, as you said, that's been really an interesting few years with the COVID, and we'll talk about all of that shortly on the show. But let's start off with the news as we usually do, because we've got football, we've got skiing, we've got rugby, we've got motor racing, and we've got darts even. And of course, the skiing season finally kicked off this past weekend in Levi in Finland. But I do want to actually start, Nancy, with golf, because we don't often talk about golf, but there's women making seriously big money and winning multiple titles, and the one that has now become the 19-time LPGA champion, winning the final title of the season, and a $2 million check, Nancy, and that's the one and only Lydia Ko. What an end to the season for her. And it's funny how we don't talk about golf. Golf is a very popular sport. We seem not to talk about it as much, and I'm not sure why. Maybe because it's not an Olympic sport. I don't know. That's not the reason. We do cover it, of course we do, but I don't know. Help me out here. Why haven't we covered more golf, Nancy?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know if it's, personally, I don't really watch any golf. So maybe it's just not on my radar as much. Obviously, I know kind of what's happening and the biggest players in it. But it is really interesting, because I suppose as well, it's such a lucrative sport for women to play. If you're going to make a lot of money as a sportswoman, it's only really tennis and golf where you can make, millions of pounds in prize money if you're at the top. So yeah, I don't know, but I mean, it's definitely a growing sport, isn't it, at the moment? And,
yeah, it is a leading sport, and certainly in terms of prize money, for sure. That was a $2 million check that Lydia won, and wraps up the season for her. But it also noteworthy, of course, is that she's been the LPGA champion for 19 times now. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, it is. It really is. It's pure dominance of the sport, isn't it? And yeah, it's an amazing achievement.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to Lydia. And she's going to lead our news this week. A close second in our roster for this week's news is that the World Cup skiing season got underway in Levi in Finland, with 2 slaloms, Saturday and Sunday. And the American Mikaela Shiffrin made that a doubleheader. Back-to-back wins, really very convincing. She came out in tremendous form, worked really, really hard, was a bit nervous, but played to those nerves and pushed even harder. And she won on Saturday. She beat the Swedish girl Anna Svenn Larsson and Petra Vlhova, who's her main arch rival from Slovakia. She came in third, and she also came in third on Sunday as well when Mikaela won yet again. And then the Swiss skier Wendy Holdener, who's always there or thereabouts, she's had now 30 podium wins in World Cup, and she finished very, very close behind Mikaela. She could have almost won that, but she's got the 30 to her credit. Mikaela's got 76 podium wins to her credit, and Petra 59. So it looks like it's going to be a battle of these giants again, and certainly in the slalom. So I'm looking forward to that season now fully underway. They'll be coming over here to Killington in Vermont now, and then we'll have the first downhill of the season in Lake Louise in Canada after that in November. So looking forward to that. Great season ahead in the world of World Cup skiing. Then football, of course. We have to talk about football because football's well underway in Europe now. But we'll talk very briefly, Nancy, about the weekend. The weekend didn't go entirely according to plan. Normally we talk about the Lionesses winning and Arsenal winning, but neither of those things happened this past week, did they?
No, well, that's true, actually. Good point about the Lionesses. I've kind of forgotten about that. But yeah, they drew their second international friendly 1-1 with Norway. And it was, I mean, I watched that match and it was a bit of a weird one because Norway weren't very good and then equalised quite near the end. And it was Ellie Roebuck was in goal for England and it was a mistake from her. So yeah, a bit of a weird one. But I guess Serena kind of used the match to test out some younger players and change formations and things like that. So I guess in that respect, it wasn't a loss, but yeah, a bit of a strange one. And then, the weekend in the Women's Super League, Arsenal's unbeaten run finally came to an end. It was a good effort. But yeah, they lost 3-2 to Manchester United at the Emirates. It was quite a dramatic match. Arsenal were 2-1 up in the 74th minute, and then United scored 2 goals in the last 15 minutes with Alessia Russo, who I love so much as a player and as an England player. I love her so much, but it was really painful to watch her head back. I was going to say,
that had to be a love-hate relationship because I know you would particularly like her when she's on the Lionesses team. She's been a star there, but when she's scoring against your team, maybe not so much.
Yeah, and in the very last minute as well, it was quite a painful one to take. And as well, what was interesting was because it was at the Emirates in this big stadium, the Manchester United fans had a proper away end, so they were all together, which is still quite a rarity in women's football over here. I don't know what it is like in the US if they segregate home and away fans or not, but yeah, for women's football here, it's quite a rarity. So that kind of increased the atmosphere a bit because it was kind of 2 sets of fans doing their own chants and stuff. And then obviously when she scored the winner, she did it at the end where the away fans were. So she could kind of run to them and celebrate. And it was, it was amazing as a neutral, I think, to see that kind of moment happen in women's football. But I think for the majority of all the Arsenal fans in that stadium, it was, difficult one to take.
Ouch, yeah. But, you've had a good run and, even the best teams eventually, as we know, sometimes it's just not your day. And that was really, great opportunity. And she seized that moment. So credit to her for sure. But we'll move on quickly because I know that was a painful loss to you. Let's move on to rugby real quick because last week we were looking towards the Rugby League World Cup final, which took place at the Old Trafford ground, as you mentioned, in Manchester, England there, and last weekend. And it proved to be Australia had won the men's final, and then they went on and did it in the women's too, beating New Zealand very convincingly, though. Did you watch that, Nancy?
I did, yeah, and it was a very comprehensive win, like you say. It was quite one-sided to 54-4 win to Australia for their record-equaling third World Cup title. And yeah, I did think it might have been a bit closer than it was because New Zealand and Australia had played in the group stage and New Zealand had only kind of lost narrowly in that game. And they've also themselves won 3 World Cup titles, but at the start of the millennium, so 2000, 2008. But yeah, so I kind of was surprised by how one-sided it was. And I think it is Ali Brigginshaw. She in particular had an amazing game. So she was kind of the one that made the difference. And yeah, I think well done to them because they're obviously kind of the most dominant force in women's rugby league at the moment.
Yeah, women's and men's. So, yeah, congratulations. That wraps up a big few weeks for rugby, both codes, rugby league and rugby union. All right, moving on to some great news that you just shared with me, Nancy, for motor racing. After we saw the abrupt and premature end to the W Series for women, now they're announcing a new Women's Academy for Formula One. This is really exciting. 150,000 euros is going to be given to each team. Cars provided. This is just what they need.
Yeah, it is. And I think when I first heard rumours of this, I was a bit not confused, but I was kind of just trying to work out how it would fit in with W Series. Because I kind of just heard that F1 was launching its own like women's competition, but yeah, it's actually an academy, so it specifically focuses on younger female drivers, hopefully equipping them with the talent and skills to progress into W Series and then Formula 3, Formula 2 and ultimately Formula 1. So I think this was one of the problems why there aren't that many women racing in F1, because I think kind of progression is a lot slower, and then you don't get, in F1, they're normally quite talented when they're quite young, and then they get in there, relatively soon in their career, as opposed to a lot of the women in the W Series are maybe already starting to get too into their career to be really making it in F1. So I think they've tried to give the opportunity for younger female drivers to get experienced enough to race in F1 sooner through this academy. So yeah, it will consist of 5 teams run by current F2 and F3 teams. So each team will have 3 cars to make up a 15-car grid. And there will be 7 events throughout the season with 3 races each. So that would be 21 races.
Yeah.
So yeah, quite substantial there. And I think they've made it kind of seems like it's relatively financially sustainable, with F1 subsidising the cost of each car up to 150,000 euros. So yeah, there's quite significant backing there from F1. So hopefully it is kind of establishing that pathway for younger female motorsport drivers, which currently doesn't really exist.
Absolutely. No, I think it's wonderful. One door closes, another opens. So very, very good news for women in motor racing. We're going to move on to a very slow sport compared to motor racing now, to darts. It's a sport that we have covered from time to time. And if you follow, then you'll know the name of Fallon Sherrock, the English player who dominated. I mean, she really made the news last year anyway. And she's now getting a place at the 2023 World Championships, Nancy.
Yeah, this was quite an interesting one because initially Fallon hadn't actually qualified for the World Championship. So Bo Greaves, who I believe we've spoken about previously on the show, but she's the kind of teenage superstar in women's darts at the moment. And Lisa Ashton had claimed the 2 qualification spots for the World Championships. But it seems like the PDC have retrospectively gone back and put a qualifying spot in for the women's world match play competition, which took place in July. So because Sherrock won that back in July, she's now got a place at the World Championships. So I have seen a little bit of slight criticism on social media about it, because I think some people feel like they've kind of bent over backwards to give her a spot at the World Championships because she is so kind of iconic. But at the same time, she has shown that she can completely hold her own at the World Championships, beating a lot of her male opponents. So I don't think there's too much to complain about. And if it's more women at the competition, then, that's fine by me. So we have 3 women competing at the World Championships this year. It's always over Christmas. That should be really good. And hopefully we can see a few occasions where either Sherrock or Ashton or Greaves take on some male opponents and beat them. Yeah,
good news. And good luck to Fallon. We're going to move back to winter sports now, Nancy, because you've got a story, an unusual story, about a protest in Nordic Combined Skiing.
Yeah, I saw this just like only a couple of hours ago, and I was like, I have to read this because this sounds really interesting. But the Norwegian skier Guida Westfold Hansen. She's a Nordic Combined skier, and she led a protest against the exclusion of Nordic Combined from the women's program at the 2026 Winter Olympic Games. So there's only going to be men's events in Nordic Combined at that event. Essentially a number of skiers protested the decision to leave them out. They marked an X and wrote "no exception" on the snow with their ski poles. But Hansen went one step further and protested by drawing a beard on her face. So I'm presuming to make herself look like a man. Highlighting the fact that it's unfair that only men can compete in this competition. And probably that message was even stronger when she went on to win the event as well. So she told the Norwegian broadcaster NRK that she thinks it's absurd that you have to look like this or have a beard to be allowed to compete in the Olympics. Just kind of spoke about how important it was for Nordic Combined that there was a women's event at the Games. Really fair play for them for speaking out about it. It's obviously there's hardly any Olympic events these days that don't have an opportunity for both men and women to compete. So I think for Nordic Combined not to have that is a bit of a disgrace, really. So it's respect to the women for protesting against that. Yeah,
I absolutely agree. That's the main brunt of our news this week, but it leads very nicely into our review, really, of the last few years. I think what we've seen is women's sports come so far, and yet some, have been making 2 steps forward and 1 back, haven't they? I mean, like Nordic Combined, they've got their own World Championships, they've got the World Cup Series, and yet, 2 steps forward and then 1 back, like you just said. So some sports have just, progressed in leaps and bounds. Look at what's happened in cricket and in football. I mean, just in your career, if you think about how many years have you been a professional sports journalist?
Coming up to 5 years. So you just look back in those few years and the progress that's been made. Yeah, it is amazing. And it shows what can be done if there is the kind of dedication and resources, I think, put into, really progressing women's sport. If you're really bothered by it, I think just looking at the Lionesses progress, I think it went from the FA were obviously a bit fussed about it, but they were still doing silly things like putting Phil Neville as manager when he'd never managed a football game in his life and stuff like that. And then you can kind of see the moment they start taking it seriously and putting resources into it and hiring, managers like Serena. And then, the team's winning Euros in front of 90,000 people. Just, there's that obvious impact of just organisations putting in more of an effort into women's sport. And yeah, it is. I think it can be quite frustrating to see people still not putting those resources in, and still, some sports are just going backwards. But you'd hope with sports like football and, rugby, we've seen the Rugby World Cup, and sports like that are really kind of making other sports look bad. And even if that's the only motivation for them to start like pouring resources into women's sport, then, maybe that has to be done.
Yeah, and I want to mention, actually, funnily enough, as we wrap up this show, and this is our last episode of the show, we'll be retiring. This is season 4, episode 44, as it happens, all the 4s. And we are wrapping up, we're retiring this particular show. But we had a message on Twitter just this past week from somebody called Jennifer Lee Hoffman. She said she was so stoked to tune into WiSP Sports. Want more women's sports media coverage? You should tune in too. And then there was a reply to that today saying, spot on. Somebody said, spot on, Karen. The non-revenue label undervalues women's sports as an excuse not to support women's programs. The new media landscape, including WiSP Sports, Just Women's Sports, and Together XR, are all proving that audiences will pay to watch, and women's sports have incredible dollar value. You don't have to pay to watch or you pay to listen with WiSP, but you do with some, and with some outlets. I mean, I could think of The Athletic, and there are some outlets where you do have to pay to play. But for the most part, I mean, your outlet, for example, that's free, right? That's any number of sports you're covering extensively, but there's not a subscription, is there?
No, there's not, and it is free to read. And I think that is definitely a benefit in comparison to, I think, the Telegraph, they have their own women's sports section, which is really amazing.
That's the London Daily Telegraph, yeah. Yeah,
but that is behind a paywall. So that, even though they're writing about women's sport to a really good extent, sometimes you just can't access it. And, journalism does good quality journalism. There needs to be money coming from somewhere. So, if you're not making the money through advertising, then I guess it does have to be subscription. But yeah, there are definitely ways of being able to read about women's sport for free. And I do like that. I'm part of something that both this and Give Me Sport, it does offer that. If anyone wants to read about women's sport, it's there, it's available. There's no excuses not to be.
That's right. And the other thing we should mention also that's happened since we've had this show and since you've been covering women's sports is the increase in TV coverage as well. Not just print, but TV coverage. And you look at some of the statistics for, attendance and viewing for some of the major competitions that we've seen over these last few years, Nancy. I mean, I think of football, obviously, tremendous crowds now on both sides of the Atlantic, and they just keep increasing. And then cricket, the 100 series that had, it was second year this year, wasn't it? Tremendous crowds there. But then we've also watched how crowds are coming to the non-championship games and matches and so on across sport. So it's had a ripple effect, which we always hoped it would have. And of course, it helps when the sport produces the rock stars as well. And I want to mention a couple, but I'm going to toss it back to you now because I want to get your sort of snapshot of the last few years and some names that have resonated with you and some results.
Yeah, I mean, most recently, probably the whole Lionesses team. I know that's so biased, but I think that just England women winning the Euros was just so incredible and something that I've always wanted to happen. And was amazing to win the home tournament, and then just to see, like you were saying, such a dramatic transformation of women's football and a real kind of, you could see how it directly increased, attendances at matches, viewing figures on TV, newspaper columns, and the amount of people and space that media outlets dedicate to women's football. There was a real tangible kind of outcome from that tournament. And just the way that all the women kind of held themselves and spoke about the importance of girls being able to play football at school. And you could tell it meant a lot more to them than just winning a football tournament. It was about, increasing the participation of girls playing football and giving them the chances that they didn't necessarily have. So I thought that was incredible. And I think it's going to be hard to beat. I think even, if England go on to win World Cups and stuff like that, I think it's different winning it in front of a home crowd and having that real kind of impact on people. I think Emma Raducanu winning the US Open again is really hard to not include, just because of the pure fairy tale of that tournament, just coming from absolutely nowhere, being a qualifier and rocketing all the way through the tournament and winning it. And just, for British tennis, for women in British tennis, it's not been the best. We've had Andy Murray, but there's not been many women in tennis here that have really succeeded recently. So it was amazing to kind of see that and just the interest in her. And again, the kind of attention directed to her and her winning Sports Personality of the Year and getting that recognition. I've loved it when you've seen the women, we were talking about Fallon Sherrock, but women beating men in their own sport. Well, not their own sport, but in, combined sport. So Fallon Sherrock at the darts, Rachel Blackmore, with things like the Grand National, and they were all really amazing.
Horse racing, for anybody who's not followed. Yeah.
Horse racing, yes. They were really kind of iconic moments because it was, just really historic and showed that it could be done, and was such a, I think, pivotal moment for women's sport. So,
well, there's also been, talking about horse sports, a breakout name in the sport of eventing, which was my sport. And that is another British rider, actually, British eventer, Jasmine Ingham. You may recall Nancy, she was crowned world champion, just 25 years of age. So she's a name to watch for the future because she's had a bumper year this year. Fantastic. She came over here to Kentucky. She got second, and then she went to Italy and became world champion. So big shout out to her. Exciting new name in the sport. And also going back to motor racing, I want to shout out for Jamie Shadwick because she's had an amazing few years, really, last 2 or 3 years. She's come through as one of the most prominent women drivers. And with this new opportunity in Formula One, I mean, that's obviously a fantastic opportunity for them and for her. So, I'm looking forward to following that. There's just so many names, Nancy. You mentioned Emma Raducanu, Lionesses, that we talk about rugby as well, and how well, the New Zealanders, of course, won the World Cup this year. But over the years, we've produced obviously more and more champions. There's so many. There's just so many. We're going to miss out a lot of names. But I think overall, it's an exciting time for women's sports and for women in general. Women in sport is empowering women, period, and young girls. And I do hope they'll take heart from that and not become disillusioned when they're going through their formative teenage years, and they'll stay with it and find a sport that works for them and that they can keep coming back to as they get older. But yeah, I think it's at a healthy time, healthy space now, for the coverage that women are getting in all kinds of sports. And it's only going to get better. So we just have to keep pushing the boat out, Nancy.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's it. It's just continuing to push. I think it's not settling for things and not being like, we've reached this point. It's good enough. I think it's just to keep going. And I think in some areas it's probably going to be near on impossible to get equality in terms of, wages in domestic football. I don't really want to see women get, like £60 million and stuff like that, because I just think it's, that money isn't the best necessarily, but I think it's a point where it's, equity and it's a level playing field. I think more or less that's what we've just got to keep pushing for. And yeah, even though, I guess it's kind of doing it in our own small way. So it might seem insignificant, but I suppose kind of, one more article or one even tweet about women's sport is one more than it would have been before. It might alert someone to an athlete or a sport or an area that they didn't know before, and they might start following it. So yeah, our own little contribution, I think.
Well, we hope so. We hope so. And we hope you've enjoyed it and that we've, brought some news to you every week with what's happening around the world, because I know my friend Nancy here just keeps an eye on things. And I remember when I first met you, Nancy, and I was watching you on Inside the Games, and realized that you were getting so much experience from covering so many different sports. That, this knowledge bank that you were building was going to put you in a very good place to be, building experience, building the skills and the knowledge and the reference point, for a lot of different sports. So I hope this has helped you to continue to do that, and do it in all mediums.
Oh, yeah, it definitely has. I think I'll probably have to keep doing just a weekly recap of everything that's happened in women's sport just for my own sake, because there's things you miss sometimes and stuff. So just having the chance, I think, to sit down and dedicate some time to collating the stories from the past week is always great. And again, sometimes I'm in a little bit of an echo chamber at times with the sports I like or what's the big things happening that week. So kind of looking beyond that and making sure I'm on top of everything that's happened is definitely really important. And yeah, like you said, it definitely, the few years that I spent inside the games was amazing for that, because, there were sports I hadn't even really heard of, or followed at all. And you get such a good basis of it in it that it's really easy afterwards to then kind of keep up with everything and just know who's the star performer in certain sports and, rules and things like that. So yeah, no, it's definitely been, in that sense, incredibly useful. And yeah, like I said, probably something that I'll try and keep up, just having that quick overview every week of what's been happening across the world.
Well, hopefully I can keep sending you texts if I see something. I'll text you.
Yeah, of course.
Have you seen this? And I'm sure you'll do the same. But it's been fun, Nancy. I'm really glad that you agreed to do this, and that you stuck the distance of 4 years. And I don't know how many shows, because we've been, as you said, recording through COVID when we didn't know if we'd even have any stories at the start of COVID. We were scratching our head thinking, well, what are we going to cover? There's no sport. But it turned out to be, might have been a pause in competition, but it also gave us an opportunity to look at all the other stories, that are off the field of play, so to speak. And it was very brief when we look back at it, don't you think? It was actually a brief period where we didn't think there was any sport, any competitions to cover. And we got through it, and the stories just kept coming.
Yeah. And I think, I do remember, that concern. And then it just, every week there was still stuff to talk about. And I think there was, with the Olympics kind of being postponed, and that had just such a massive impact on literally everything, because it wasn't, there would be an event that wasn't related to the Olympics whatsoever, but it had to be postponed by a year because the Olympics was moving into their slot. So that happened, with the Euros, of course, it wasn't directly because of the Olympics, but, everything being shifted around and the calendar being rejiggled, and the impact that had on athletes, and I guess how athletes just got through lockdown and what was happening to sports financially and things like that. So like you said, it was, even though there wasn't any action, it was still loads of stuff happening off the pitch. And I remember the NWSL came back. They had that tournament, the Challenge Cup, didn't they? I think it was like June, which it was only kind of 3 months after everyone went into lockdown in March. So like you said, the period is actually kind of relatively brief, but at the start it was quite daunting. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for sticking with it, Nancy, and for doing the show with me. It's been great fun. Really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed looking at these stories, looking at, and at different sports, and the evolution of the sports, and the development of the athletes as well. It's been great fun. Lots of great stories. I hope if you've been listening that you'll go back and listen to past episodes of other shows as well, because there are so many here on the network. And yeah, we'll be back in the new year with something. Not sure what it is yet, so stay tuned. But I've been podcasting so long, it'd be strange not to be podcasting, just because this show has been retired. So thank you to all of you for listening, for tuning in when you have so many choices when it comes to podcasts now. And thank you, Nancy. Just remind everybody how they can find you on social media so they can keep up with you.
Yep. So I'm on Twitter at Nancy_Gillen, and then My Instagram is @NancyGillen_sports. And yeah, currently writing for Give Me Sport Women. You can find us on Twitter @GiveMeSportW.
All right. And we are, of course, at WiSP Sports on social media. I'll keep posting stories there so you can keep up with us while we're off air over the holidays, over the Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays. If you're living in the States and Thanksgiving means something to you, have a wonderful week. Enjoy your Turkey Day and, of course, Christmas as well. And to you, Nancy, very happy Christmas holidays. And we'll keep in touch, I'm sure. And, yeah, look forward to what there is out there for us in the new year, whatever that may bring. So again, thanks for sitting beside me here, metaphorically speaking, every week to cover the news in women's sports. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Nancy.
Yeah, and thank you for inviting me all 4 years ago. It was, I guess I was a bit of an unknown kind of, I could have been horrendous. So I guess, yeah, thanks for taking the risk and taking me on the journey, because it's been really, really fun. Really fun.
All right. And thank you again to everybody for tuning in. And whatever your sport, hope you enjoy it and keep on spreading the word about women in sport. Thank you for listening. Goodbye for now.